Hello, everyone. It's Megan Taylor again. We are at week 8, and this week one of our assignments was from chapter 4 of the Marazano text, and so I'm just going to get right into it. We were asked to identify some of our big takeaways from the chapter, and the first thing that I want to start with is on page 64, and it's under the heading Designing and Scoring Assessments Using Selected Response and Short Construct Response Items. And it says that one of the most common ways to design an obtrusive assessment is to combine selected response items with short constructed response items. I feel like this was one of the big takeaways from this chapter for me because it really reaffirms some of the stuff we've learned earlier in the semester, like from chapter 6 of the Miller, Lynn, and Groland text about how to plan classroom tests and assessments. I always try to implement and make sure that all of my assessments have a variety of test item types on them, just to secure that I am measuring all of the objectives in a manner that is fair and equal to all of my students, and making sure that my questions that I'm asking are being asked appropriately. So I feel like when we plan assessments that we really have to make sure that we vary our test items just so that we can make sure that we're measuring content appropriately. And that's what a lot of this particular statement was referring to, is that, you use the right amount of true or false items along with the multiple choice items, and that you're not skewing your test results because you're not asking questions appropriately. So that was a really huge takeaway for me. The second one I picked out was on page 67, and this was about the aberrant pattern. And what the aberrant pattern is, they occur in the world of state testing and standardized testing as well, and it's when a student incorrectly answers a 2.0 level task, but they answer all of the 3.0 level tasks. And what that is it's just when a student doesn't answer a quote-unquote easier question, but they can answer a more difficult or complex question. And we see this happen a lot in our classrooms, and it's a completely normalized pattern at this point. But the text says that an aberrant pattern can occur for a number of reasons, including the following. Test items written for a particular score value were flawed in some way. Students put effort into answering some items but not others. Or that teachers' evaluation of student responses were inaccurate. All of these things happen quite regularly in our classrooms. And so what we have to do is be aware of that with our test writing abilities and when our students are taking our tests. I know for me, some of my students kind of just tend to blow off certain portions of the test because maybe that portion of the test wasn't weighted very heavily, or they were just like, I don't know any of this because I know I didn't study for this because I'm more concerned about another portion of the test. So aberrant patterns happen all the time, and I think it's just really important that we be aware of it. And I really like this part of the test because before I didn't know how to explain that other than my students just didn't try on this portion of the test. I never took into consideration that it was, in fact, a normalized pattern. I mean, I knew I've seen it quite frequently, but the text really helped me understand that a little bit more. The next thing that I pulled from chapter 4 of Marazano is on page 74, and it's about the unobtrusive assessment. And I feel like this is something that I don't use a whole lot of in my classroom. I feel like a lot of my assessments are stop, plan, intentional, let's interrupt instruction to assess what the students have learned. So unobtrusive assessments are easily applied to skills, strategies, and processes. Again, this according to the text on page 74. This is because skills, strategies, and processes usually involve doing something that is observable. Thus, a teacher might catch a student performing a skill, strategy, or process in a natural setting. I think this is something I definitely want to try to do more of this upcoming school year, is to assess my students in a normalized setting. So take a student who is reading a passage, because my action-based research strategy, action-based research is on struggling readers. So when I teach my Foundations of English class, some of the assessments that I would like to conduct would be unobtrusive assessments to see how students are reading and why students are reading in a normal classroom environment versus stopping and pulling a student out and saying, okay, I need you to read this aloud so that I can assess what your problems are. Students are more likely to perform more consistently in unobtrusive assessments, and it would probably give myself, as well as the student, a better idea of exactly what the problem is. And I feel like that's one thing that I want to look at this semester, this upcoming school year too, is when a student has a problem, making sure that the student understands what their true struggles are. Because in the reading classroom or in an English environment, a lot of the students don't know what their true problems are. They just know that they've been told, hey, you don't read really well, or hey, you don't test really well, or you're just not that great of a writer, but they've never been told why. And so the student doesn't really understand what their true problems are. I feel like unobtrusive assessments are a great way to get there to that point with the students. And then my last big takeaway from chapter 4 is on page 75, and it's on student-generated assessments. And again, the text refers to this as perhaps the most powerful and underutilized type of assessment is student-generated assessment. Students propose tasks that will demonstrate their knowledge of a specific topic. Usually students are student-generated assessments to move from one level on the scale to the next. I feel like I use a modification of student-generated assessments because when we do some of the projects in my classroom, one of the big things I like to do is give my students voice and choice in their assessments or in their assignments. So with their projects, I'll give the students a big question or a driving question, and I will say, okay, now you have the choice of how you are going to respond to this question or scenario in our classroom. And the students get a choice of maybe writing an essay, maybe oral presentation, or maybe they do a video clip of some sort. And I really like the student-generated assessments or the student-generated projects that we do in my classroom. Some of the students have come up with really great things, and they've been really unique projects, and I've absolutely loved that about that. So definitely something I definitely want to work more towards. But the text this week really helped me understand how powerful they can be. And again, one thing I want to communicate with my students this semester is letting them see that, giving my students full access to rationale, reason, purpose, and intent behind the projects and the work that we do in class to help them become better students or to help them improve and make it to that next level. Because again, like I said, one of the big problems I see in my classroom is that students don't understand the background knowledge that the teacher may or may not see. Because I can get background information on my students and I can get previous test score data, but that's all I see. I don't really see what led to that data or how that data was collected. And that could, in honesty, like impact all of that or impact the entire student by not understanding where the data was collected from. If the data was collected in a non-normalized setting, then maybe the student was just thrown off and that affected their test scores or whatever the case may be. And so just a few of the big things that I took away from this chapter. The Marazano text in general just has really lent itself to me back to the Miller, Lund, and Groen text about measurement and assessment and teaching, because that's what a lot of this has been about. While standards-based grading is new to me, I really feel like that it's been a growing process this semester to understand the construction of rubric and the construction of grading assessments that I really didn't get a whole lot of in my undergraduate career. So I feel like I've really been able to learn so much more about different aspects of assessment, and that next year when I go into my classroom, it's not going to be, here's a test, hand it back, let me grade it, here's your score. I'm super excited to try out some of this stuff and to try out and make new assessments in my classroom. I typically make a lot of new assessments each year because I don't tend to teach the same thing over and over again. And so by using this information, I think my assessments this coming school year are going to be a lot stronger, and they're going to be more beneficial to my students as well as myself. And this leads me to my graduate teacher standard for this week, which is 3A. And it says that teacher leaders demonstrate in-depth knowledge of curriculum instruction and assessment. again, it's just been a very big learning process this semester to learn about the different aspects of assessment, learn about the different aspects of standards-based grading, rubrics, and the whole process of what an assessment is. I really feel like I can take this a step further and that I understand more about how assessment is supposed to work in my classroom, and I'm going to be able to plan and implement assessment efficiently that will align directly with my curriculum and my instruction. And it's no longer going to be just a whole lot of obtrusive assessments that are stop, here, take your test, here, get your grade back, and then go forward. Looking forward to getting into this and super excited about it. And those are going to be it for me in terms of my big takeaways from Marazano Chapter 4. I can't wait to see what everyone else comes up with.